Hey everybody, sorry I couldn't be there for you today, but we're going to go through the next lesson anyway. Anytime I go too fast through something, make sure you just hit pause and write down what's going on. It doesn't have to be a 20-minute lesson. It doesn't have to be exactly as long as the timer says. You can make this as long of a lesson or as short of a lesson as you want. Now, we are going to be working with some exponents that are fractions, which means I would probably open up Desmos if I were you. Before we actually get started with the lesson itself, I do think it would be worthwhile to pop open a window of Desmos just really quick, because I think it's a good demo for some of you. Let's say you hate fractions with a burning passion and you have no idea what's going on. It would come in handy to have a window of Desmos open, because you can change your answers from decimals to fractions on Desmos really easily. And the best way to do that here is, let's just type this in. Everybody knows that if you have a common denominator, math is not exactly very difficult. Okay, 1/5 plus 3/5. Okay, with a common denominator, 4/5. But that button right there is going to be a lifesaver for you, because then even if you don't have a common denominator, it'll still take care of it for you. That way, instead of having to worry about what that repeating decimal is, you can just hit that button and you can say, oh, hey, look, it's 5/6. So I want you to make sure whenever you have trouble with this lesson at any point, you pop open a window of Desmos and you just kind of rock. Now, it is good to know how to make common denominators and things like that, and we will practice that as we go. But for now, I want to make sure you have a backup plan. Okay, so we've got our warm up here. And again, I'm going to move really, really quickly here because I don't want to waste your time on the video. So if at any point you end up with a time that I'm going too fast, just hit pause. All right. So our rule for multiplying is that you add the exponents, and a half plus a half is a whole. So we end up with x to the 1 power. I'm not a big fan of putting that 1 there, so I'm not going to. All right, 1/3 plus 2/3. Well, that would be 3/3. So I guess we're going to have the same thing. All right. Now 2/3 plus 2/3. Now we're talking about 4/3. Some of you may have a temptation to change that into a mixed number. Please, please, please don't. That would make me sad. Mixed numbers are not anything you're going to be using in future math classes, so please just leave it as 4/3. Also, if you try to change it to something else, that just leaves you more open to making a silly mistake somewhere down the line. Like, if you have the correct answer, please leave it. All right. This last one, I am going to want a common denominator. And for those of you who watched the first minute of the lesson, yep, you could just type it into Desmos. It would do it for you. You would get it right. But it is a good skill to have. Learning common denominators is important, so you might as well go with it, and you end up getting x to the 7/6 power. Okay? So jot that down, and we'll move on to the next slide here. All right, so our next rule, we've got power to a power stuff going on. And I think you already know most of that. So we're going to start with ones that are pretty short and sweet and to the point here, such as x to the 12th. Remember, if it is a power to a power, if there is a power in parentheses with a new exponent attached, all you have to do is multiply. All right, well, what's half of 2? Well, 1. Okay, it looks good to me. 1/2 times 3 would be 3 over 2. Again, please resist the temptation to make it into a mixed number. And then 2/3 of 6 is 4. If you don't believe me, just do 2 times 6, which is 12. And then 12 divided by 3 is 4. You could even use the old school multiplication methods and put it over 1 and then multiply straight across. 3 times 1 is 3, 2 times 6 is 12. 12 divided by 3 is 4. All right, so now we're going to go with the division rules. We know that when you multiply, you add the exponents. When you divide, you subtract the exponents. So we're going to need common denominators for all of these. Or, again, I don't want your lack of fraction knowledge to be the reason that you struggle in this lesson. So if at any point I do something that you do not like, please just open up Desmos. 1/2 minus 1/3 is 1 over 6. Okay, so again, I made a common denominator and then I subtracted. If that is not something that you like to do, use Desmos, move on, it'll be fine. Not a big deal at all. All right, so let's go over here. This screen is going to get crowded because there's going to be a lot of work to do. All right, so we have x to the 9 over 12, 3/4 is the same as 9 over 12. 4/3 is the same as 16 over 12. So again, I'm trying to get a common denominator, and then I have to multiply the fraction in order to make it work out. In this case, the common denominator was 12. How do you turn a 4 into a 12? You multiply by 3. But whatever you do to the bottom, you've got to do to the top. And again, if you're not great at this, then use Desmos and move on with your life. Now, this is the first moment where something very weird is going to happen, because 9 minus 16 is -7. That's not a good enough final answer. So this is something where we need to start introducing you to the big picture here. One of the big picture things that you need to know is that in this chapter, your answer is not considered simplified unless you write it with positive exponents. Okay, so when you have a negative exponent, you have to move it. Now, we learned in the very first lesson that exponents are really just multiplying by the same number over and over again, and negative exponents are just dividing over and over again. So it's like instead of having that number of them on top, you're going to have that number of them on bottom. So the easiest way to handle this situation is really just to move it to the bottom. Hop the line and change the sign was always the cheesy thing that I learned when I first started teaching. So whatever works for you, but long story short, that needs to be written with the exponents on the bottom. Okay. As soon as you write it on the bottom, that negative exponent changes to a positive one, and we are good to go. All right. To change a 5 into a 15, we have to multiply by 3. And to change a 3 into a 15, we have to multiply by 5. And then now that we have a common denominator, we can subtract. This one is going to be fine just the way it is. I don't have to move anything around at the end. I am good to go. All right. Last one down here, we have 8 over 3, which is the same as 16 over 6 if I just multiplied the top and the bottom each by 2, which then is a little bit peculiar because I have the same exponent on top as I do on bottom, If you subtract something from itself, you get 0, and anything to the 0 power is 1. So they're trying to bring in that exponent rule that maybe you forgot. Okay. All right, now we get to the ugly stuff. With a partner, pick the 3 hardest and 3 easiest problems from those below. Explain, why do you think they're the easiest ones? Why do you think they're the hardest ones? Okay. I have a couple of suggestions, and I also think there are going to be a couple of them that are going to be very challenging for you because of the numbers that are involved. So I just want to throw that out there too. Based on what we have learned so far, I know this is crazy and you might not even believe me on this, but you don't even know how to do this yet, or this. That's something we get to in lesson 3. I don't know if you all listen to me in some of these lessons when I go over just little tips and tricks, but I've been saying it, and I'm going to continue to say it. Your life is going to be easier when you don't have any numbers involved and you're just dealing with variables. Like this problem right here. If I am in your group, I'm going to choose that one as one of the easiest ones because it's power to a power. That's all it is. That means you multiply. 9 times 5 is 45. 45 divided by 3 is 15, and we are done. So if you're asking me, I'm going to choose that one every time. Okay. Same thing over here. 8 times negative 5 is negative 40. So that gives us negative 40 over 4, which is negative 10. And then because it's a negative exponent, I'm going to move it to the bottom. Okay. So that's what I would do for that one. And once again, I'm done. Okay, so life is pretty good there. Okay. If I'm going to pick one more problem that I think would probably be the easiest, I'm going to go right here to the far upper right. And the reason I'm going to pick that one is because power to a power tells us we're going to be able to work through this one nicely. A fourth of 4 is just 1. So this is going to become a to the 1. Half of 4 is 2, so that's going to become b to the 2nd. And then we have that a on the outside. That a on the outside is not in the parentheses, so we're not going to do anything special with it. So really we're just going to multiply the a that's already here times the other a, and a times a is a squared. So that means my final answer would be a squared and then b squared. Okay, so those are the 3 that I would pick that would be the easier ones. Obviously, we're not going to feel great. We're not going to feel totally prepared for the harder ones. And that's going to be the moment where we're going to say, hey, Desmos, we need you. Please come save us. And it'll feel like we're cheating, but it's going to help us get through really quickly. Let's do this one right here. And again, I know it said with your partner pick some things, but obviously I'm not here to guide you, so I'm just going to pick a few myself and just give you some suggestions, okay? I could actually do this problem without showing any work. Don't tell anyone. The other teachers will get mad at me. But I could do this problem without showing any work if I just popped open Desmos, okay? So I'm going to start with the numbers. I've got 2 times 2 times 3. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. So I'm going to put a 12. My final answer is going to have a 12 in it somewhere. Then let's remember the exponents first, because when you multiply, you have to add the exponents. So I'm going to go into Desmos because there's a whole lot of stuff going on over here. 1/4, negative 2/3, 5/4. So 1/4 negative 2/3 5/4. There you go. 5/4. All right, so sorry, we had some technical difficulties there. But what we have so far, we all remember that our original problem should have a 12. Our answer should have a 12 in it. And then we just got 5/6 as our new x exponent. All right, so now we're going to do the y's. We have 3/2, 1/2, and 5/3. So let's go through 3/2, 1/2, 5/3. (11/3). Which means our final answer for that one is going to be (12) x to the 5/6 power and y to the 11/3. All right, looks good to me. So that's what I'm going to do in this situation whenever I get caught working on a problem and I'm not really sure what's going on. We'll do one more real quick without Desmos because that took a little bit too long. Power to a power means that W is going to become a 15. -3 times -5 is positive 15. That M is going to become a -20. And then what people don't remember a lot of times is that 2, even though it's a number, it's not a variable, it still needs that negative exponent. So that means as we go through and we do this work, when we're writing a final answer here, the M has a negative exponent, so it has to move. Since it's already on the bottom, we're actually going to move it to the top. Okay? Now, the W is actually okay where it's at. Okay? So you could either write it in front or in back. Sometimes I like writing it alphabetically. I'll leave it in front because that's where it already was. Doesn't really matter. And then on bottom, that 2 to the -5th is going to have to move down and become 2 to the +5th. And then we just have to multiply it out. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 32. Okay. So what I want you to do, pause your video right now, and I want you to pick one challenging problem here. It's said with a partner, pick 3 easy ones, 3 hard ones. We've already done 3 easy ones. We've already done 2 hard ones. I would like you to try one problem with your partner, one that doesn't look easy, one that you're actually going to have to fight through and work through some challenges with. That's what I would like to have from you. So pause the video and then we'll wrap up here in just a minute. All right, so if you're back here, the synthesis, we already talked about a couple of these things. I want you to talk to each other. Rational exponents are going to be just like regular exponents. Anything with a fraction can be dealt with just like everything that doesn't have a fraction. The only difference is you might need a common denominator. You might need to remember some other exponent rules. Negative exponents can turn into positive exponents by going from the numerator to the denominator. If they are already in the denominator, then you can go the other way around. Okay? So write down something like that. Okay? And then our last little piece of work here, we wanted to throw in a whole lot of negative exponents. just to make sure you know what's going on. So let's talk about some strategies that we can use, okay? Let's take this problem right here. And every time you see a negative exponent, move it, okay? So I'm going to leave the y to the third. But then I'm going to put the y from the bottom next to it, because anything with a negative exponent needs moved. Done. All right, then I am going to take that x to the 3 over 2 on the bottom, and I'm going to leave it. But I'm going to take that x to the negative 7 over 2 from the top, and I'm going to move it to the bottom. So anything with a negative exponent needs to move. All right, and then last but not least, the z's are going to get a little bit weird because they're both going to move. All right, it looks like a total mess. I get it, looks like a total mess, but our final answer is actually very close to being done, and I'll show you why, all right? Let's start with the top. Y to the third, y to the first. If we're multiplying everything on top together, and that's what's really happening, by the way, we're really just multiplying. We add the exponents, so that is going to be 3 plus 1, which is 4. Okay. Then we're going to look at the z's. 7 over 3 minus 1 over 3, because we're dividing, so we're going to subtract. That would be 6 over 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then last but not least, let's look at our x's. When we multiply, we add the exponents. 3 over 2 plus 7 over 2 is 10 over 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. All right, so I would like you to try the other one here, and all you're going to have to do on this one is take everything and pick it up and move it. I guess you have another strategy you could use as well, but I'd really like you to try that one on your own so that maybe when we come back, we can take a look and see how we did. So thank you for making it all the way through. Make sure you get your homework done. There will be a sheet that has 3-1 on the front and 3-2 on the back. So make sure that gets done before the next time I see you. Otherwise, good luck, and I'll talk to you soon.